You've a million walls up to touch the sky, but they're coming down now. They're coming down, no, they're crumbling. It's gonna save you. It's easier to run when the journey's just begun. It's gonna save you. Gotta hold your head high. It's easier to run. It's gonna save you. Just begun where the truth is in your bones. Are you gonna be a hero? Oh, oh. Are you gonna be a hero? Somehow the veil has been lifted, and solid ground suddenly shifted. Your reflection in the water don't look the same, and you're going down now. Oh, you're going down. Oh, you don't have to drown. It's gonna save you. It's easier to run when the journey's just begun. It's gonna save you. You gotta hold your head high. It's easier to run. It's gonna save you. Just begun where the truth is in your bones. Are you gonna be a hero? Oh, oh. Are you gonna be a hero? Are you gonna be a hero? Oh, are you gonna be a hero?
Yeah, I walk with broken feet, generations on my back. All the secrets that I keep got me shackled by my past. I can feel it buzzing, no, I can't do nothing. I can hear the trumpets, flowers on the coffin. Change is coming. Change is coming. I'm feeling it, I'm feeling it. Change is coming. You can fight it if you want, but some wars you just can't win. Keep on punching underwater, but you'll never hit a thing. Yeah. Now all my blood is rushing. Here's the repercussion. Yeah. It's like all of a sudden someone pushed a button. Change is coming. Yeah, change is coming. I'm feeling it, I'm feeling it. Change is coming. Yeah, change is coming.
leave me to my own device. I never had to compromise. The city is like a jungle, gotta make it mine. Put my fears right out of sight. Beat the hustle, better get it right. In a game where the strong survive. Only the strong survive. Your chains will not hold me down. The break and fall to the ground. Can't tame these lions inside. The power is raining like thunder, ready for a fight. These lions inside. These lions inside. These lions inside. These lions inside. I had to learn to be the hero. I started on a heaven zero. In a city like a jungle, I had to get mine. Never give, you gotta take. Be the catapult to storm the gates. Cause the champion is never giving in. See you through till the end of days. Till the end of days. Your chains will not hold me down. The break and fall to the ground. Can't tame these lions inside. The power is raining like thunder, ready for a fight. These lions inside. These lions inside. Can't tame these lions inside. Can't tame these lions inside. The ground that they're walking ain't cutting through their skin. They're hunting down their prey to the bitter end. The ground that they're walking ain't cutting through their skin. They're hunting down their prey to the bitter end. The ground that they're walking ain't cutting through their skin. They're hunting down their prey. Let the games begin. Your chains will not hold me down. The break and fall to the ground. Can't tame these lions inside. The power is raining like thunder, ready for a fight. These lions inside. These lions inside. Can't tame these lions inside. Can't tame these lions inside. This ground that they're walking ain't cutting through their skin. They're hunting down their prey through the bitter end. This ground that they're walking ain't cutting through their skin. They're hunting down their prey. Let the games begin.
Yo, what's up, everyone? Uh-oh.
Welcome, everybody.
There we go. Matthew freaking me out.
Yeah, I don't say yo.
I know. How is everyone today? Hope you're well. How was the timing on that music? That was like right there at the... That was pretty nice.
Tell me that you planned that, because that really
I did,
leapt out
actually.
to me as
I look
being
at all the timings and
beautiful.
stuff when I did that. Yeah, that was...
And it was dark and very thematically appropriate.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it was
yeah,
a good
It's
one.
like the curtain call right at the... Yeah. So...
Yeah.
Amazing. Matthew, how are you, sir?
I am really freaking good. So
That's good.
For those on the call that haven't seen this on social media or LinkedIn or whatever, I have begun a sabbatical. So this is the end of my second week of a 3-month break that I'm taking. I'm really excited to spend the time with you and with Adam today. It's going to keep me from forgetting everything that I know about Fabric and Power BI, or at least will help delay or slow down that forgetting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And you have been missed on the work side. So
Don't tell me anything about it.
I haven't. I specifically have not said anything. So we were talking family stuff before. We were talking travels and maybe a little bit of FabCon, but more about Stockholm, not the conference itself. So
Absolutely.
yes. So excellent. Yeah. All right. If you are new to the live stream or new to Guy in a Cube in general, put hashtag new in the chat. We love seeing all the new faces. And we just want to welcome you and just thankful you are here. If you, going through my mental checklist here. Shout out to all the members of Guy in a Cube. You help us do what we do here on the channel. If you see folks with a green name or the icon next to their name, those are members of the channel. Every time I get a little more worried that I'm like, well, like it's almost everyone's a member. And so is it even worth just do open chat, the whole thing, because everyone's a member anyway. But thank you so much for supporting us. Very much appreciate you being here. If you want to learn more about being a member, check out the link on the screen or hit the join button down below to learn more. No commitment required. Just thank you for checking it out. And yeah, so let's see if we've got, I don't think I saw anyone that was new, so that's okay.
Quiet crowd today.
It is a quiet. So it's a little bit lighter. I noticed last week there weren't as many folks joining. Right now I'm showing like 63, so it's a little lighter. That could be just summertime and people, have a life on a Saturday. Like that's possible. I don't, but Matthew's just chilling, so it's fine. But yeah. So rules. We have rules. So get your questions in. Q : in front of that question to get it queued up. Chatmaster C standing by. One time is all you need, and that will get queued up. I would say normally we don't get through all the questions in the queue. So before we cut over to member only chat. So if we don't get to it, sorry, come back next time. We'll try it again. We'll go from there. But Q : in front of it. Rule number 2, do not spam the chat. Please do not spam the chat. We have a 3 strikes rule here on Guy in a Cube. So if you do spam the chat, you get 3 strikes and then you get put into a timeout by either Chatmaster C or one of our other moderators. So please don't do that. And then rule number 3, members, hold your questions until the halfway mark. Chatmaster C will give you the green light and let you know when you can submit them. Depending on how today goes, if it's just a light queue and not a lot of folks here, we may just open it up. It just depends. We'll see. It depends. So we'll see. And then also, if you do have a burning question, you want to make sure it gets answered today. Super chats always take priority. So that will jump the queue whether we're in member only chat or not. Just be sure to type in your question when you do the super chat. Otherwise, you're just giving us a super chat, and that's great too. Thomas, number 4, no Kerberos questions. What are you talking about?
It's like Kerberos. It just works.
Yes, that's why there's no Kerberos questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just works.
Nobody has any questions because it's so simple.
It is.
And it just works by default.
It does. It's just it's like the old, it's plug and play, right? It just works. So all right. All right. Matthew, anything you want to say before we jump into the queue?
Nope. No, this is a great way to start. Lots of familiar faces and a couple new names in chat. So love to see the questions coming in. There was a great one from Sandeep at the top of the chat.
Yes,
if that's where we're going to start.
We're gonna start right there, assuming my network wants to behave. There we go. With the introduction of semantic layer creation feature inside of Microsoft Fabric, can you please advise the best place to create a semantic layer for Power BI reports? Is it in Fabric? Is it in Power BI Desktop? I don't know. Matthew, what do you think?
I think Sandeep won the chat today. So I love this type of question. But Sandeep, the answer is hidden somewhere inside your question. How do you define best? What are the criteria that you and your team or you and your project are using to evaluate these different options. There really is no wrong answer here, and a lot of it is going to depend on what criteria or what characteristics of the solution are most important for you. For all of the Fabric work that I do these days, which is non-production, like I'm doing projects for myself, I just do everything inside the browser. I haven't opened Power BI desktop in forever, unless I'm working on some legacy project that I'd started before Fabric was a thing. Because for me, that simplicity of working inside the browser and having all of my capabilities inside one consistent tool that I can get to from everywhere, and I don't have any files that I need to store, like this is what is best for me. But back in the day, like I would do everything inside of Power BI desktop because this was the one tool, and it really comes down to where you're comfortable with. And if we step back beyond the options that you've included in the question, what about Tabular Editor? What about all of the different code-centric tools that you could use that might be better if part of your criteria includes a large group collaboration, having the ability to do more structured professional deployments, change control or source control, and so on. A lot of it really comes down to what's most important for you. This is one of the best types of questions where there's no right answer, there's no wrong answer. It's really about what's important for you and those criteria on which you on which you will evaluate bad, good, better, or best.
Yeah.
What did I miss, Adam?
Are you on a Mac? I don't know.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, I hope not.
Hey, they didn't get CloudStrike, so it's fine.
Is it cloud struck? I think
Cloudstruck.
is the past tense.
Yeah, and then that makes me think of Thunderstruck. So
And David has dropped "it depends" into chat.
Yes. Wow, many
y'all
other
are
people
going to
did too.
notice. I'm going to do my darndest to never say "it depends" and instead to talk about the things on which it depends, because that's really where the interesting conversation takes place, I believe.
I agree, but I will say it depends. So we get $1 in that charity jar, so we can give back to others. So, all right.
And in that case, it always depends.
Yeah,
Let's do
always.
that.
Yeah. It's for charity. So, okay. I love the answer. I don't have outside of the Mac thing. It was spot on. So yeah. All right. OpenTube had a question. I know, Matthew, you had asked for some clarification. I didn't catch if they had followed up on it. But it said,
I didn't see anything.
Okay. So it said, yo, is there a change coming to the Power BI premium capacity licensing?
Probably.
Well,
Yes.
so there was a blog.
Yes, something's coming.
Let me see if I can. I should have looked this up before. But there was a blog talking about the licensing change that's coming. Here we go. This is the blog. I'll put it in the chat. And so it's talking about the retiring of Power BI Premium per capacity licensing, and that will happen. Some of that the timing of that depends. The actual answer to this question is yes, there are changes coming. So the answer to the question is not it depends, but the timing of it depends on contracts and what you've agreed with the organization and Microsoft. So if you're just doing straight out just direct buys, yes, that's going to stop. So you'll have to look at looking at Fabric capacities from an Azure perspective to continue beyond premium capacity. So yeah.
And he just dropped into chat saying he's good.
Okay. Yeah. So concerned about has not enabled Fabric yet. So there's a couple different things here. One of them is there is a tenant setting to enable Fabric items. So whether you can use things beyond Power BI. The Fabric capacity itself, think of that just like a premium capacity. It's just a different purchasing option. So it's on the Azure side versus the Microsoft 365 side. And so even though you have a Fabric capacity, it will still enable all of your Power BI capabilities, and you just assign a workspace to it. You can still have Fabric items off if you haven't adopted Fabric, even though it is a Fabric capacity. So don't get caught up in that from a capabilities perspective. Just know that it can power your Power BI pieces and your business. So anything else there?
Absolutely.
All right.
No, like that thing that you added at the end with the clarification from OpenTube.
Yeah.
It's really a different way to get the same thing.
Yep. So, and we had that before too, because you had Power BI Premium capacity from the Microsoft 365 side, and then if you were doing embedding, we had the A SKUs on the Azure side. So it's just another licensing SKU. So, all right. Matthew tried to educate me before the stream. I know I'm going to screw this up again. Guillermo. Did I do it right? I think I did it right.
Yes, you did.
Excellent. All right. So Guillermo says, I'm back from last Saturday about DAX tables in a semantic model using Direct Lake. I'm sure is a Direct Lake one. Maybe it was a glitch. Yeah. So we're calling back from last week. We had this discussion about in the modeling editor in the web, like it was like, wait, new table used to be there, but now it's gone. And the discussion Patrick and I commented on was like, no, I don't think it's ever been there for Direct Lake. But if you have an imported model or direct query, then you can do new table. And so I think that was just more of a comment on that. But yeah, I don't know what you saw, Guillermo. But right now, like that's the current way that it works. So. If you want to see something different, go to ideas.fabric.microsoft.com and get your feedback in. All right. Let's see if this works. I'll drop that in the chat. We'll see if that works. Okay. Let's see. Next one. How easy is it to switch the capacity of a workspace between regions? Ooh.
So I guess is the question to move a workspace from a capacity in region A to a capacity in region B, in which case it's really easy. All that you need to do is reassign it to the different capacity. But moving a capacity from one region to another is complicated enough that Matthew will gladly defer to Adam on this.
So I would actually say both are complicated. So in terms of migrating a capacity, like if you want the capacity itself, you want to move it from region A to region B, you actually have to create a new capacity and destroy the old capacity, and then you have to move the workspaces. That part's actually, it's simple in terms of the clicks, but it causes a lot of complication in terms of like what you have to actually manage on the content and workspace side. There are also complications if you're taking a workspace and you want to move it from a capacity in region A to a capacity in region B. There are several things that will block you there, and almost all of the blockers of workspace migration from one capacity to another are predicated on it being in a different region, and so that's going to cause problems. There are continuous conversations going on about that, about how to alleviate it. And I know the team is working on documentation in terms of migration and how to go about doing some of those things. It may actually require you to republish and rebuild certain things because of that. So some of the things like OneLake from a regional perspective can be a blocker. I think data flows also has some blocker things in there as well. So there are certain things that just become blockers on that front. And part of the reason, it's not the complete reason, but some of it also has to do with regionality and like if you think about data. So like say if you had a capacity in Germany and then a capacity in the US, like there are some things you have to consider there too in terms of compliance and whatnot. And so the team is looking further at like how do they mitigate some of that and make it not as painful for you to go about that. But just know if you're moving from one region to another for a workspace, you're going to have some work to do. If the capacities are in the same region, you just change it and you're good. So, yeah, that's an ongoing discussion.
Yeah, I had forgotten about the data sovereignty and related compliance aspects of this. So the technical side simpler, the real world side less simple.
When I think some of the blockers also, which the team is working on, there are some technical things there too under the hoods that cause some problems. So, and that's something they can work on, but the compliance piece is another factor for sure. All right, Prachi. Can we migrate? This is another twist on the question. Can we migrate a Power BI workspace to another tenant? No. Not out of the box. I mean, obviously you could do things to redeploy and move things and potential automation through certain APIs and whatnot, but yeah.
Yeah. And if we let's actually jump back to the first question from Sandeep about the best place to do your stuff. Having multiple tenants as deployment targets is one of the reasons or one of the factors that would make building your semantic models and other parts of your Power BI/Fabric solution as code, that's going to make this much more important or relevant. So if you had done all of your semantic model development in Tabular Editor, if you had the code for creating your data flows or creating your other assets that were stored outside of the service, deploying it against one tenant, deploying it against a different tenant is going to be much simpler. But if you built everything inside Power BI/Fabric, then you need to get those things into a format that you can deploy to another tenant later on.
Love it. Yep. Lots of things to consider. All right. Let's see here. Carthy. How easy is a lot of migration questions? How easy is it to migrate to Fabric from Synapse and Azure Databricks? I don't know if you want to take a spin on that, Matthew.
Yeah, it depends. So migration is always challenging because your real world solutions are complicated. Depending on what's in your solution, getting from a current Azure Synapse Analytics or Azure Databricks deployment into Fabric could be simpler or less simple. Thinking about the data warehouse capabilities in Fabric, one of the key capabilities that data warehouses provide that a Lakehouse-based approach does not is that support for T-SQL and stored procedures and so on, where having a Synapse-based application, data warehouses are a great migration target, but a lot of the devil is in the details, and a lot of the complexity of a solution. It's not about it's not about what Synapse does or what Databricks does or what Fabric does. It's about the intersection of your processes, your tools, all of the things outside of the service with whichever service is running it. So a lot of the complexity or difficulty is going to come into just the characteristics of what you've built, which is really hard. That's the question that you talk about with your architect or your consultant or your Microsoft account team to get into the details.
Yeah, and I dropped a link in the chat. We do have documentation on Microsoft or for Azure Synapse Spark to Microsoft Fabric. And so that's one of the things to consider too with Synapse is that there's a difference between dedicated pool and the serverless option, which is the Spark option. There is no apples to apples with dedicated pool and Fabric, and so that's something to consider as well. That will come into the picture. There's other documentation there too of how to migrate data pipelines and other things from Synapse to Fabric. But yeah, everything Matthew said kind of comes into that. So. Yep. And then for Databricks, it's a similar thing. Although the other thing I'll add there too is, and I'll be honest, Matthew, I was half listening. So you may have said
what? I wasn't listening at all. I never listen when I talk.
You don't have to do it all at once. You can piecemeal it. And so even thinking about it from a Databricks side, if you're leveraging notebooks and everything on the Databricks side, is you could let's start with the storage, then let's look at notebooks, then let's look at the other data properties, and go from there. So it doesn't have to be all at once. So you can kind of phase it in and figure out what makes sense at what intervals. So Also,
and
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say also the other thing is, do you need to migrate it? I don't is it working? I don't that's a business decision.
Yeah, and I was going to go in a very similar direction where in a lot of situations, going from an older technology to a newer technology, like a lot of the people that tend to show up for live streams like this, they're technologists. Like we're all thinking about the world through the lens of DAX or Power BI or SQL or Fabric or Databricks or whatever. But technology is only valuable as it solves a problem. And if you already have a solution that is solving the problems that are important for your business stakeholders, for the people that provide the funding, like who is it that you built this solution for? Does it do what they need? If it does, it's probably the value of migrating to any newer platform is going to be reduced. Very often what you want to do is you want to evaluate what are the places or what are the criteria where the current solution is not delivering on what the organization needs it to do. Do you need like a lower total cost of ownership? Do you need consistency across tools? Like what are the things that the Fabric-based solution would give you? Look at those things as part of your justification rather than just looking at the technology itself.
Yes. And maybe talk to people, which we don't like doing. But
yeah, talking to people, always overrated.
yes. All right. George, can I use managed identities with Fabric? Not yet. It is on the roadmap, on the publish roadmap. So stay tuned. So that is coming. I'd also like kick it back to you. I don't know if you want to put more in the chat, but like, what's the scenario you want to use that with? Like, where do you want to use it? Because those are all factors of I always, whenever there's discussions about roadmap items, whether it's NDA or not, it's always like, will this feature come? Yes, this feature will come. I'm like, well, but is what we're delivering going to match what your needs are on that, right? So I'm like, the devil's in the details on that. Will you have managed identities? Yes. Is it exactly how you want to use it? I have no idea. Like, let's have that conversation. So,
and I love, Adam, that you're singing my song here because people come in and ask, like, is there going to be this solution?
Yes.
Like, sure.
Yeah.
Like, yes, no, eventually.
Yeah.
But whether or not that solution actually solves your problem is usually more a function of the problem that you need to solve than the feature or solution itself.
Yep. Yeah, I remember there's been so many of those on the Power BI and Fabric side where it's like, will you have these? Yes, check mark. Okay. Well, but wait, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. So that's why I'd love to know more about like, what's the business problem you're trying to solve? Where do you need it? Like those kind of things. That's helpful. So
yeah. And Adam had earlier dropped a link into the Fabric Ideas forum. So this is where anyone can go to submit their requests or their suggestions to make Fabric better. One of the things that we're constantly reminding people, or at least I am, is that if you go in and simply say, I want this feature or something like that, like that's not really useful. Instead, providing information about, I have this scenario that I need to implement, like these are the goals that I'm working to achieve, and include in that the gaps or shortcomings of the solution right now that prevent you from doing what you need. This additional context is going to make it much more useful to the product team, like the feature owners or PMs that are reading through your feedback. And it's also going to make it much more likely that when we actually deliver the feature that you want, it does what you need instead of just being a checkbox that ends up not helping you.
yeah. Yep. So
Yeah.
all right. Ilya has a question for Matthew specifically, and I very much want to hear your answer on this.
My like, how is this a Matthew question?
Hey, they said Matthew,
I'll
so I'm like,
let you
all
read
right,
it,
let's go.
Yeah.
What is your take on shortcuts to an on-prem Amazon S3 compatible data source, impact on gateways, etc.? What's the use case for shortcuts versus data movement? That part, I think you definitely weigh in.
Yeah. And like, so I want to add as a qualifier, I am not an expert on the patterns of communication using shortcuts. Like I've never double clicked into this. So there is information that's needed to really answer this question that I simply don't have. So interpret my response as coming from a position of like partitioned ignorance. Like there's some things that I can speak to, but some things that I can't. But a lot of and actually, so let me step back and ground my response. So a shortcut is valuable specifically because it allows you to prevent data movement and the duplication of data that is like the product of data movement, while still allowing downstream code or downstream processing to access upstream data that's in a different location. This is true whether or not your shortcut is to another part of OneLake or to Azure Data Lake Storage or wherever, right? Like this is basically a chance for you to say, I already have the data that I need. Use it where it is instead of making a copy of it in my current workspace or my current lakehouse. And the complication that comes in with the S3 compatible on-prem data sources is the fact that they're on-prem. The gateways, the on-premises data gateways that Fabric and Power BI have supported for years, they provide a lot of flexibility and reasonably good performance for accessing on-prem data from the cloud. But generally what you want to do as part of your end-to-end architecture is to ensure that the places where you're accessing on-prem data through the gateway with all of the latency that the longer hop and the non-locality of data, like your data is physically very far away from where your processing is taking place. You want to make sure that this is not part of an interactive process. Like it's not a place where the low latency is going to introduce challenges that are detrimental to your solution. So when I'm thinking about whether we would use a shortcut or simply move the data in, a lot of it comes down to how much data are we moving? So are we shortcutting to relatively small data and we're doing it so that we're just have a simpler end-to-end architecture? That probably makes sense. If you're accessing hundreds of terabytes every day through a shortcut, like this is probably going to produce unacceptable performance where the cost of using shortcuts outweighs the benefits that come with it. It's definitely one of those it depends type questions where if we're thinking about as far upstream as possible and as far downstream as necessary, that trade-off is probably going to come down to both the performance side of things, which is going to be a function of the data volume and a function of the downstream compute that you're doing. And and this is a place where I'm going to like throw the phone a friend card out to Adam. This is also a place where shortcuts include some types of caching and other performance assistive capabilities so that it's not simply every time that you access a file, it's going over the gateway or through the shortcut to get it. You'll have to take this into consideration as well.
Oh, I love it. That was bam. That was everything. Yeah, I mean those. The other thing I'd add too, obviously the shortcut piece is relevant in the question, but when you think about the gateway or like I even go back to like just regular like a SQL Server data, like going through a gateway versus it being like Azure SQL database or whatnot. It's it's regardless of the data source necessarily. It's just the thinking of how you want to go about accessing and leveraging that data and the maintenance that comes with it and all of the other factors that Matthew mentioned. So, yeah.
And there's a few additional comments and questions in chat as well. So Tom asked basically, so the shortcut function's more or less like direct query. So I'm going to say like yes-ish. So direct query is going against the database. A shortcut is for a file-based data source. So, and Adam's going to keep me honest here. Like remember my disclaimer from earlier. But basically, when you access a file through a shortcut, it is going to wherever the file lives and reading the file to bring it back to where the compute is waiting in Fabric.
Yeah.
So unlike direct query, where there is a compute engine sitting on the database side, but at the same time, they are similar because when you need the data, the request goes to the source and something comes back each time, rather than having it physically located like in memory or in the lake in the cloud service where it is closer to that compute.
Yeah. Yeah, and the shortcut versus direct query, those are two, you're actually thinking about it in different functions. So direct query is specific to like how Power BI is accessing the data. The shortcut is irrelevant of Power BI, although with Direct Lake, we can leverage the data sitting in one lake, which may be serviced by a shortcut. And so that's part of the difference is that even if I'm using Direct Lake, that doesn't mean there's shortcuts involved. That's at the storage level. And so they're vastly different things. So yeah.
And there was one additional follow-up question from Sandeep that I want to respond to. So Sandeep asked, wouldn't it be advisable to port data into Fabric Lakehouse and decommission the Amazon S3 bucket? Why should someone maintain two cloud providers? And there's two different responses that I want to share. So one is, there are lots of valid reasons for a multi-cloud strategy. So if you Google it or use your search engine of choice, like there's lots of places where it makes sense from a future-proofing perspective, or it could be part of the legacy that your application is built in. Like this is where the data is, and it's not in budget to move it and change that part of the architecture. But even though the original question mentioned Amazon S3, it really had nothing to do with Amazon.
Yes.
S3 is a standard. There we go. It's like
that was the point I was going to make.
Storage something. It stands for simple storage something, which is where the S3 comes from. But Amazon S3 is a cloud service that implements the S3 APIs and storage capabilities in the cloud, but there is a whole bunch of on-premises providers for I'm having a vocabulary failure here for your own non-cloud file-based data lakes. I want to say Cloudera is one of them. Hortonworks being another. Like if you were into big data before the cloud was ready for big data, you might have petabytes worth of files in an S3 compatible source on-prem. This is what that original question was about, not actually about Amazon per se, even though Amazon is probably the best known S3 provider.
Yep. Yeah, and I remember originally when the shortcuts came out, it was specifically for Amazon S3, and there were some internal discussions. Customers were bringing up, hey, what about us? And there were some big providers of S3 capabilities there, because there's other organizations that do that. They're like, what about me? And so then it came, okay, well, just any S3 item we can connect to. So yeah. Excellent. All right. And Nick Hurt, thank you for becoming a member. Very much appreciated. All right. So there were a few more questions in the queue, but we are going to cut over to member-only chat. It is that time where members and moderators can participate in the chat. Everyone else can watch the stream and take in the knowledge and whatnot, but you have to be a member if you want to participate in the chat. To learn more, let's do that. You can check out the join button down below to learn more, or I'm dropping a link in the chat where you can learn more as well. No commitment required. Just thank you for checking it out. But this is one of the benefits of being a member. And so members, make sure you get your questions in. Chatmaster C cleared the queue, and we will cut over to member only. And there we go. All right. One of the benefits of being a member at the visitor or producer tiers, you can pre-submit your question. So if you want to learn more about that, go over to the YouTube channel and check out there's the community tab. There may be I need to check with someone who's actually a member to see what they see. Because I see like a members tab also. I don't know if you see that, members, but there's a member specific post that talks about how to pre-submit the question. We don't have any today, but just know that is one of the benefits. All right, go into the queue. Christina, first in. Hope you are well, Christina. What is the best way to access data in an Azure container that is behind a firewall from a Fabric warehouse? Think using a copy into script.
I have no idea.
Yes, Matthew. What is the best
way? I can't
way?
even picture this.
And so this is where, like the VNet gateways start coming into play, where I start thinking about that. So if you got it behind a firewall or like a private link of some case, like we need to be able to connect to that data. And so like it may end up where the best option is a gateway. So it depends on either a VNet gateway or an on-prem gateway. So the VNet gateway, I believe, supports Azure Data Lake storage. And so you could do that. Now, the specific things from a warehouse perspective, I need, and what I need to double click on is, even though we do the VNet gateway to the Azure Data Lake storage, does the warehouse support, or how are you getting the data in this? So a pipeline, I believe, supports it. And so that could do the data movement from that perspective. So those are things to dig into. You're probably gonna need a VNet gateway though. In that case though, you said firewall and not private links. So I don't know that the VNet gateway is gonna help you in that scenario, in which case you need an on-prem data gateway. Nice. And David is saying the VNet gateway does support it, but on-prem data gateway does not. What specifically is it in that comment? So that would be helpful. It. There are many its in that whole scenario. So is it pipelines? Is it warehouse? Is it whatnot? So yeah. Is it on? Yeah. Anyway, so Christina, that's where you're probably going to need a gateway of some sort in that scenario. So just know that. The other thing to look at, I don't know if it's supported yet. It's something that we've been, or that Microsoft's been looking at to enable. Typically, when you set up like the firewall or the private link pieces, there's an option in there that says trust Microsoft like services. And I don't know if all of the Fabric pieces are aligned to that. So that may be an option too, where that would just allow Fabric to connect into it from a backend perspective. So that's something to look at as well. I don't know if that's supported or is relevant in your scenario though. So cool. All right. Good question though. All right. So David said, what did David say? There's a specific authentication method for Data Lake Gen 2. Can't remember the names, but it's explicitly VNet only. Yeah, I know what you're talking about there. So there is a, I want to say SaaS. It's not a SaaS token. It's something else that allows you. There's a specific thing with that with VNet Gateway and whatnot. But there's other options to do. I know there's other options to mess around with that. So I'd have to dig into it though.
Yeah, she provided some additional details in chat as well.
It's a strange case. We're using click replicate to populate data into a warehouse. Interesting. So we aren't using a pipeline. That's going to complicate things. Yeah. We've got the trust Microsoft services checked, but it's not working. Well, so click replicate is not a Microsoft service, so that would not be able to get in. Go ahead.
So, but like thinking about this additional detail, like where does that click replicate job run? Like where is the compute located for this? Because the most significant variable is going to be, how do you get that location access to the Azure resources that are behind the firewall? Like that's the big question that you need to figure out. So where the replicate job is running needs the ability to read from the Azure source and the ability to write to the Fabric destination. Think about the problem by breaking it down into those two different bits. Solve one, make it work, and then move on to the other one rather than trying to bite it all off in one bite.
So the other thing to think about too is when you say trust Microsoft services, that does not include, I have Click Replicate running in an Azure VM. That is not considered a Microsoft service. A trusted Microsoft service is like Microsoft Fabric or Power BI. Like it's a Microsoft-owned first-party thing that we control, and so we know how it's implemented, and it's a safe route through Microsoft's backend. When you're in a VM, like we don't know what's running in there, and so that's not a valid scenario. So in that case, you've got to think of something else. So yeah, that's a whole different question. So, Click Replicate is running within the Fabric warehouse. Interesting. I'm not familiar enough with Click Replicate to know like how that works. And I don't know how you would run that within the Fabric warehouse.
No.
Like that sounds
I
sus
think
to me.
You're too old to say
I know.
sus.
I did. Anyway, it's fine. It's fine.
But I think that Christina is just using similar terminology with a different purpose than what we're doing.
Yes. Yeah.
So like understand like where is Click Replicate installed?
Yes.
Like think about it that way, not where it's running. Where is it installed?
Yes.
Where is that executable located? That's the thing
source
that you want to focus on.
That's what needs to connect to the storage.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, because that when you said Click Replicate is running within the warehouse, I had visions back to like on-prem SQL, where in a store procedure you could like actually call like. There was my gosh, I saw some nasty things. So yeah. All right. I saw Paul's thing that threw me off. I don't know what that's about, but all right. Moving on. Shane, Gen 1 data flow. I have a user who experimented with their personal OneDrive. I like how you put one. That's nice. I cannot find where to delete this connector. Should I just recreate the data flow? There are only about 10 tables. I don't know. I have a theory, unless you have something, Matthew.
Like you have a theory about what the scenario is, or about what the solution is?
About the solution.
Well, I'm trying to figure out like what's the problem here. So you have a user that experimented, like we all do that usually in college. But where do we get from that to this is why Adam is never going to invite me back.
I never went to college.
Where do we get from that to deleting this connector? Like why? So you have a user that experimented. Why would you want to delete a connector? What does deleting a connector even mean? I'm very, very lost.
Yeah. So I agree with Matthew on that point about like why, like what is the concern here? What's the actual problem? Like, are we trying to move it into productionize it or whatever? They've got their personal OneDrive, so we're moving it to a different. So in terms of the connection itself, and this is where I'm going to head over to my machine. I know this exists for Dataflows Gen 2. I haven't played around with this for Dataflows Gen 1. But if you go to the gear, come down to manage connections and gateways, all of the connections are here that you own, that you're available to connect. Now, if you're a Fabric administrator or a global administrator, you can actually check this box and then see everything for everyone, right? And then you can manage it that way. So somewhere in this list, I'll see Patrick. So somewhere. And so this is where you could potentially manage and delete that connection. But I don't know if this is actually leveraged by Dataflow Gen 1. So it's possible that may not work. That's the only place I could think of in terms of doing it. But yeah, overall, yeah, you'll have to recreate it. So unfortunately.
And there's a user education opportunity in there somewhere as well. So if you found a user action or a pattern of user action that is going to cause you problems, this is a chance to look and see how can you deflect users from going down that path that causes you pain in the future.
Yeah. Like, please don't use personal OneDrive and production in the same scenario. So that's probably a good place to start. Although I do appreciate and realize how things happen in the day-to-day where it starts off as, hey, let's try this. Oh, let's move that to production. And here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, having a given user accessing files that are stored in their personal OneDrive for business, their own my SharePoint site, this is much better than having them store it or access data on their C drive on their laptop that's only accessible when their laptop is up, that sort of thing. So
and or a personal OneDrive that's not managed or governed by the organization, all of that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Get fired for that.
Where you can just like share a link out to the world and, rage quit and all of that. And then we hear, things in the news about massive data leak for a company and,
Yeah. Then you show up in next year's standards of business compliance training videos.
Yeah. Yeah. I always love that Microsoft I'm like, ooh, I knew that guy. Like, I know a guy that did that. It's so scary. All right. Tom, any recs on the easiest way to create a day? I'm assuming
I think that's an Irish thing. Day o day.
I'm assuming day over day metrics to trigger alerts that exclude weekends and holidays. I mean, you're going to have to write some logic there. So in terms of recommendation, I mean, in the context of this, it depends. It depends on a lot of factors. But I would also say maybe take a look at the capabilities of not Reflex. What did they rename it to? I'm blanking on the name.
Data Activator.
So in terms of doing alerts, so like if you can get specific measures and whatnot built in your reports, like on a visual, inside of a Power BI visual, you can create a Data Activator Reflex that will actually do the alerting for you. So that part's actually a really cool capability if you're leveraging all of the Fabric items and have the capability to do that. So then the question would be, okay, well, how do you write the measure that would accommodate the scenario that you're looking for? And that, I mean, we'd have to go in and play around and see what your data looks like and whatnot.
So, and this is like, Adam knows how little I know about DAX, but like, doesn't DAX have time intelligence functionality that includes understanding weekdays and weekends and things like that?
Not directly.
No.
So, assuming you have a calendar table that includes that metadata, then you could start doing filter operations that accommodate the scenario that you're looking for. Otherwise, it's much harder. And so typically you'd have a Boolean flag on your calendar table that signals, is this a weekend? Yes or no? And so then you could exclude weekends, or is this a holiday? Exclude holidays. And then you've got what you need. And then based on that result, then you could create a data activator alert/reflex on that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it looks like we're thinking about this in the same way that Tom is too. So
Yep.
So to paraphrase what Tom already knew when he asked the question, have a date dimension that lets you say whether it's a workday or a weekend, and then build a measure that does the logic that you need and base your alerts based on that measure.
Yeah. And if you need a calendar sample, like Marco and Alberto over at SQL BI, they've got one that's got like all of that info. So you can just grab that and go if you have nothing else already built. So, but yeah, calendar table for the win. Plus data activator. It's great. Yeah, the Bravo stuff, Fernando, it does allow you to generate the Power BI or the calendar table. However, I think the default template doesn't include that metadata. You can add your own template as part of that to do it, but like there's a little bit extra work for you if you want something as specific as, is this a weekend? I don't think that's included by default.
I'm choosing to interpret Fernando's comment as congratulating us on the awesome answer. So thank you very much, Fernando.
Yes. as opposed to the Bravo tool from SQL BI.
Never heard of it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Here we go. Next question. All right. Can I build a query in Power BI? Well, if we just stop there, I would say yes. Where I can store data for each month from a CSV, and each month will append data. I want to have only one CSV as a source, and the older data only to be in the query.
That's very. I
think I understand.
All right, so that like the thing that I'm stuck on is, as I think through the solution that's being described here, we're basically saying that the source data is ephemeral. Once you read it from the CSV files or wherever the data lives, and you now have a downstream copy in Power BI for analytics, like that source data doesn't exist anymore, which like this will eventually introduce challenges. Like eventually this is going to come back to bite you. There's a reason why analytic systems tend to follow a pattern of selectively copying data from sources, storing or staging them, and then having the downstream in-memory representation for querying and visualization. I'll let Adam reply to how you can do this, but understand, if this is a thing that you choose to do, eventually you will regret it.
Yes. And there's a couple things in that question too that I don't know that we're thinking about it in the right way either. And maybe I'm interpreting it wrong. I don't know, but it's like, where can I store data for each month from a CSV? And so ideally that's going to happen outside of Power BI. Like that's not in Power BI. Like in terms of where your data is, if you've got CSV data and you want to store that data, that should already be taken care of. Ideally, I don't know that I would necessarily want to store it in CSVs for this purposes, but like Power BI is not going to do any write back. I started getting vibes that you're looking for how does Power BI maybe write that back and then do something else. That's not a current Power BI capability. Typically, like in terms of manipulating with CSVs, if you're doing like different months and different files, like Power Query is going to be where you're going to do that. You can just read from a folder if all the schema is the same. And then from an imported data perspective, it's just going to pull all of that in. It doesn't matter like if it's past data, older data, newer data, whatever. Because you're dealing with CSVs, like it's always going to be import. There's no concept of direct query. There's no concept of anything else. So if you are looking for a hybrid table of sorts that has a mix of imported data and direct query data, you're leveraging a different data source. You're not leveraging CSVs. So that's kind of where I was going with it.
Yeah. As a couple folks have put into chat, I had interpreted this as an incremental refresh type scenario where she wants to read only from the most recent CSV, because this is like, we don't want to read all of the history every time. We only want to read the one thing. But there's definitely a lot in there to unpack.
So saying that, I actually did a video which does this with data flows. Let's see if I can find it real quick. So I basically did incremental refresh over an ODBC driver, which would allow you to do just that. And you could like do this with CS. Basically, any any source that doesn't fold from a Power Query perspective, I actually showed how you can do this. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here we go. I think this is it. ODBC. So check that out. That may give you an idea if you do want to work with the CSV files from an incremental refresh perspective. Please know it's a complete hack. And so, your mileage will vary with that. So it's not a native functionality. So yeah.
Yeah. And the other hack that I could recommend is if you have a folder with CSVs in it, one of the things that you can do in your Power Query is to have filter logic to only return the most recent CSV file. So if you have a new folder every month that gets dropped in there, you can only read the most recent one, like sort it by date and only return the top row before you expand out the contents of that one file. That doesn't take care of the append write rather than overwrite, but it's part of the solution as well. But definitely step back, think about the goals that you're working to achieve. Don't remain wedded to this one particular solution approach. Instead, spend time really understanding what are the business goals, what are the outcomes, and look at multiple ways to achieve it, because it really feels like this is a slippery slope that you're describing here.
Yes. As opposed to a dry slope. So, yes. All right, Toma. What does new visual query do in Lakehouse SQL Endpoint? So for that, we will have to head over to my machine. So I'm waiting for my
Wait,
Lakehouse.
so you're telling Toma this only works on your machine?
Yes. You have to go to my machine to do this. And then, okay.
Failed.
So new visual query, what it's going to do is basically create a way for you to query data from a visual perspective. So it's just this query tab down here, right? And you can have multiple visual queries. They will actually be stored down here in your query section, right? So SQL query versus visual query. SQL query is just you typing in the T-SQL or whatever SQL statement. And then the visual query means I can like drag and drop. So I could do like that. And wait, and then boom, then you get the editor, and like you can actually build out the query visually versus hand typing the query. So that's what it does.
So thinking back many years ago, this was maybe like Tech Ed 2006, 2007, like many years ago. There was a vendor on the conference expo hall where the big sign above their booth was "Never write T-SQL again." And I went up and said, you'd have to beat me, but I did not have kind words. It's like never drink beer again, never see your friends again, never listen to heavy metal again. It's like, what the hell is wrong with you people?
Never use DAX columns. Oh, did I say that? Yeah.
But yeah. So
never say never.
Recognizing there are people that would rather design queries visually than write the best language ever.
Well, so sorry, let me go back. So you can do the visual piece and then go back and say view SQL, and then you can view the SQL, and it's a magic SQL that looks way better than what you would ever type, right? So yes.
I was flipping you off while you weren't showing.
No, I saw you.
Oh, yeah.
No one else saw you,
see,
but I saw it. Yeah, I can always see you.
So maybe this is only me, but the act of writing a beautifully formatted SQL query is just one of those endorphin-giving things that makes me love Fabric even more. Like for the past 5 or 6 years pre-Fabric, like most of my life was spent doing things in graphical tools, but being able to produce the query that not only performs beautifully, but is clean and consistent and just glorious on the screen. Like that's the good stuff. That's like what is best in life.
Yes, indeed. Yes. So, all right. I was kind of reading ahead into Chewy's question. And so I have, there's documentation out there I was pulling up. So excellent. Yes. All right, Chewy, this will be the last question. When connecting to SQL endpoint, you need to open port 1433, but the destination resolves to different IP addresses every time. Do you create an ACL into a fully qualified domain name? I don't know if you want to take a stab at that, Matthew.
No idea.
Okay. So in general, because of the cloud service, and it is a cloud service, which means that you could be serviced by different IP addresses, also depending on which regions you're in. And so I don't recommend doing it to an IP address. Like, you want to do it from a URL perspective, especially from allow lists and whatnot. And so I just dropped a doc in the chat, which outlines the Fabric URLs that are leveraged. And so if you're making firewall or proxy rules or things like that, do it off of the URLs. The other thing you can do too is that there is a service tag option as well. And so that is something, instead of, like, if you're even on the IP range list, you could do it by way of service tags and not individual IPs, and that gets updated weekly. So be aware of that you'll have to have some process to do that. Also know that there's no specific service tag for Microsoft Fabric directly, but there are service tags for components within Fabric, so like Power BI, Data Factory, those kind of things. And so that can help you as well. So those are different options to look at. But yeah, the IP piece will change, and so you need to accommodate for that. Yes. So the other thing I'm aware of, like, most, at least with the organizations that Matthew and I work with, most of them are familiar enough, they're working with Azure, where they're already accommodating, like, Azure's IP list into their normal process for proxy firewall rules. And like Amazon has a similar list, and so does GCP. And so typically they should be aware of it, at least if it's a large organization. If it's a very small organization, they may not know. I don't know. They may not have a process for that, but most of them already have something centralized where they're enabling all of that. And so you may just need to hook in to make sure that if they're going through service tags to do that, make sure they're accommodating for the Fabric service tags as part of that. So, yeah. All right. Anything else you'd like to add there, Matthew?
I don't work with customers, so I rely on the actual technical experts on the CAT team to handle things. Like, when I hear service tags, I have the vague idea of what they mean, but thank goodness for people like Adam and Patrick and Sergey and the lot to do the actual technical work.
Yes. Indeed. And whenever I say service tags, I just envision Sergey Gundarov on the CAT team, and that's his jam. So he likes doing that as well. So, all right, we are at time. So I appreciate everyone hanging out with us, learning all the things, asking the questions. And Matthew, I appreciate you taking time out of your time off to be here as well. And I believe you agreed to be here next week as well. So I will.
I will be here next week as well. It's great to have a chance to hang out. Community is never work. And for anybody who's on the fence for coming to the Fabric conference in Stockholm in September, I actually spent my first week of my sabbatical in Stockholm, not only because Behemoth was playing in Uppsala, just north of Stockholm, on the day that my sabbatical began, but also because it's the most beautiful city in the world. Definitely prioritize, like, figure out a way to make your schedule work to be there in September. Adam and I will be there. A whole bunch of folks from the Fabric Cat and Fabric product team will be there. It's going to be the best time ever.
Yeah.
Make it work. We want to see you there.
We do want to see you there. Excellent. All right. With that, everyone, have a great weekend and great rest of your week or next week. And then we'll see you next Saturday. All right.
Take care, everybody.
See y'all.
Get tired, I will keep on moving higher. I'm the story you don't speak of. I'm the one they call the underdog. 'Cause every time the push comes too short, I'm climbing over you to reach the top. 'Cause I want everything and nothing at all. Yeah, I want everything and nothing at all. 'Cause I want everything and nothing, 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 nothing at all. I don't want nothing at all, unless I can have it all.
I don't want nothing.